A little girl saves a millionaire's life on a crowded bridge, but what she asks for in return leaves him completely speechless. He assumed his money could express his gratitude, yet her simple plea moved him to tears and forced him to face the emptiness of his life. What did she request, and how did it change his path forever? Before diving into the story, let us know where you're tuning in from by leaving a comment below. Morning sunlight poured through the towering windows of Ethan Grant's luxurious penthouse, casting long streaks of light across the gleaming marble floors. The city below stretched out like a faraway realm, but within the walls of this glass and steel haven, Ethan went about his daily routine in utter isolation. Adjusting his tie with practiced care, the man staring back at him in the bathroom mirror appeared polished and successful, yet hollow inside. Everything in his space was pristine, not a pillow out of place or a speck of dust to be seen, mirroring his controlled, meticulously organized, yet completely barren life. At precisely 7:30 a.m., he stepped into his private elevator, the sound of his expensive leather shoes tapping softly against the floor. The ride down to his car was quiet, just the way he liked it. Later, in his high-rise corner office at Grayson Enterprises, Ethan sat behind an imposing desk, his expression cold and unreadable, as Mike Wilson stood before him, visibly uneasy. "Mr. Grayson, please," Mike's voice cracked. "It was just one decimal point in the report. I can fix it right away." "One decimal point, Mr. Thompson, cost this company thousands," Ethan responded, his tone cutting like ice. "Pack your things. Security will escort you out." Defeated, Mike slumped, his voice trembling. "I have a family, sir. A sick wife." "That's not my concern," Ethan replied flatly, turning his attention back to his computer. "Good day, Mr. Wilson." The afternoon board meeting didn't offer any more warmth. Sarah Mitchell, a bright and eager junior executive, stood at the front of the conference room, her enthusiasm dimming under Ethan's unrelenting stare. She presented her proposal for a community outreach program, explaining how it would require only a small fraction of their annual profits, while creating a positive impact on the community. "Ms. Miller," Ethan interrupted, his voice echoing in the tense room. "This company isn't a charity. We're here to make money, not friends." With a crisp click, he shut his laptop. "The proposal is denied. Next item on the agenda." Other board members shifted uncomfortably in their leather chairs, avoiding Sarah's embarrassed gaze as she gathered her things, her cheeks burning red. Ethan either didn't notice or chose not to. The disappointed glances shared around the table went unnoticed. Ethan had already shifted his attention to the next agenda item, his face impassive, as if dashing someone's hopes was just another box to tick on his to-do list. Once the meeting concluded, he walked back to his office, the heavy door clicking softly shut behind him. The walls were adorned with plaques and awards, their polished surfaces gleaming under the afternoon sun. These symbols of his professional triumph somehow made the room feel colder, more lifeless. Standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, he clasped his hands behind his back, observing the busy streets below. The reflection in the glass captured a framed magazine cover proclaiming him Business Leader of the Year. But his gaze drifted to the vacant spaces where family photos should have been. A memory intruded, unbidden. Catherine, his last girlfriend, leaving 2 years prior. "You're impossible to reach," she'd said, her voice tinged with frustration. "It's like trying to hug a wall." The words still lingered, cutting as sharply now as they had then. Later that evening, Ethan found himself at the Metropolitan Hotel's grand ballroom, standing alone on the outskirts of his company's annual charity gala. Crystal chandeliers cast sparkling light over the elegant space, where the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses filled the air. Board members, investors, and eager young executives approached him, but the conversations stayed shallow, revolving around profit margins and market trends. Across the room, Sarah Mitchell, the junior executive from earlier, laughed warmly with a group of colleagues, sharing photos on their phones. Genuine smiles lit up their faces. Nearby, Mike Wilson's replacement was settling in, already exchanging jokes with the accounting team, their camaraderie easy and unforced. Ethan tugged at his bow tie, loosening it slightly as the room seemed to close in on him, despite the perfectly regulated temperature. He performed the obligatory handshakes and brief exchanges, fulfilling his duties but feeling like a shadow among the vibrant crowd. Returning to his penthouse, he stared out at the city lights, glittering like faraway stars through the expansive windows. Sinking onto his leather couch, his phone felt unnaturally heavy in his hand. Rachel's name glowed on the screen, his sister, whom he hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Their last conversation had been about their parents' anniversary. She'd wanted to visit their grave together. He had declined, using a merger as an excuse. His thumb hovered over the call button as the clock ticked to 10:47 p.m. Not too late to call. With a pounding heart, he finally pressed it. The phone began to ring. Once, twice, 3 times. Before the 4th ring completed, Ethan ended the call abruptly, dropping the phone onto the couch beside him as though it had scorched his palm. The quiet of Ethan's penthouse felt suffocating, broken only by the faint murmur of city traffic below. The following morning, he sat at his desk, scanning acquisition reports, as the glow of his computer screen reflected in his weary eyes. Each spreadsheet detailed another small business soon to be absorbed into Grayson Enterprises. With a detached precision, he highlighted figures, calculating the most efficient ways to dismantle these companies. Richard Lawson breezed into the office, his tailored suit as sharp as his grin. "Ethan, my friend, these numbers are phenomenal. The way you're handling Mason Street, absolutely cutthroat," he said, settling on the edge of Ethan's desk and skimming the reports. 3 family businesses in one stroke. That'll save us millions in overhead. "It's just business," Ethan replied in a measured tone, though a flicker of unease stirred in his chest at the thought of those families. He quickly shoved the feeling aside, returning his focus to the profit margins. "That's why you're the best," Richard said, giving Ethan's shoulder a firm pat. No emotions, just pure strategy. During his rushed lunch, a sandwich eaten over his desk, Sarah Mitchell knocked timidly on the door. Her hopeful smile faded when she caught his icy gaze. "Mr. Grayson, I've updated the charitable initiative proposal," she began, clutching a folder tightly. "I've included projections for PR benefits and—" "Miss Miller," Ethan interrupted without looking up, "I thought I was clear yesterday. We're a business, not a charity. Spend your time on something more worthwhile." She hesitated briefly before leaving the office in silence. Ethan didn't acknowledge the disappointment in her expression, just as he ignored his phone, buzzing with an incoming call from Daniel Hartman, his last remaining college friend, still trying to maintain contact. The phone vibrated again, and again. Ethan flipped it face down on his desk and refocused on the spreadsheets and acquisition strategies, the setting sun casting long shadows across his office. As the evening wore on, the building emptied, but Ethan stayed at his desk, bathed in the dim blue light of his monitor, expanding his empire in solitude. The financial analyst's boardroom buzzed with energy as colorful charts showcased Grayson Enterprises' record-breaking quarterly results. Sitting at the head of the table, Ethan maintained a calm demeanor as accolades flowed freely around him. "Mr. Grayson, these figures are incredible," an analyst said, his tone brimming with admiration. "Your strategic acquisitions have doubled our profits in just half a year." Ethan gave a faint nod, but the words felt hollow. Despite the room's charged atmosphere, a familiar emptiness lingered in his chest. Gathering his papers, he hardly registered the continued praise as he left. Through the glass doors, Ethan noticed a man sitting on the sidewalk, wrapped in a tattered jacket, despite the pleasant weather. As Ethan stepped through the revolving door, the man glanced up. His name, George Mitchell, was scrawled on a cardboard sign beside him. Their eyes briefly met. George's were a worn, weathered blue, holding a quiet dignity that made Ethan look away quickly. Later that day, dressed in high-end running gear that felt like a shield against the world, Ethan hit the pavement. He jogged through streets alive with activity, his feet rhythmically pounding the ground. Kids played hopscotch on chalk-drawn grids while their parents caught up on stoops. Vendors called out to regulars, their greetings warm and familiar. Music floated from open windows, blending with the hum of conversations and laughter. The lively energy of the neighborhoods felt worlds apart from his pristine penthouse and silent office. Slowing his pace, Ethan passed a small bakery, its fogged-up windows glowing with warmth. Inside, a middle-aged couple bustled behind the counter. Their names, Maria and Carlos Sanchez, were etched on gold lettering on the window. Carlos animatedly told a story, his hands gesturing as he packed pastries. Maria laughed heartily, her eyes crinkling with joy, and swatted him with a dish towel. They exchanged a playful glance that radiated happiness so effortless that Ethan felt like an intruder just by watching. He stood there, sweat cooling on his skin, absorbing this small yet vivid slice of life, so unlike his own. The couple moved together in harmony, their interactions a natural rhythm shaped by years of partnership. Customers were welcomed with genuine kindness, turning routine exchanges into moments of connection. Ethan felt his chest tighten as he watched, struck by the contrast between their lives and his. The hollow feeling that had lingered since that morning deepened into an ache. Pulling himself away, he resumed his run, pushing harder as though trying to outrun the unsettling emotions stirring inside him. The late afternoon sunlight cast the city in warm amber tones as he approached the Brooklyn Bridge, its iconic towers stretching skyward. At first, a faint discomfort in his chest barely registered, a subtle reminder of his rigorous pace. Ignoring it, Ethan pressed on, dodging cyclists who sped past him. When the pain returned, sharper this time, it made him stumble. Even then, he pushed forward, each breath growing heavier with every step. Halfway across the bridge, pain erupted in Ethan's chest, squeezing like a vice. His legs gave out, and he collapsed against the railing meant for pedestrians. His expensive running gear, now soaked with cold sweat, clung to him as he slid down to the walkway, clutching his chest in agony. People moved past him in both directions, tourists snapping selfies, commuters lost in their music with earbuds in, cyclists concentrating on their pace. Not a single person noticed the millionaire struggling for air on the ground. A young couple walked by, absorbed in their conversation, sharing a laugh. A mother hurried her children along while scrolling through her phone. Below, the East River rolled on, reflecting the warm glow of the setting sun. That same sun, which had illuminated his office earlier that morning, now felt distant and out of reach as his vision started to dim. The usual sounds of the city, traffic, chatter, the occasional bike bell, seemed to drift farther away, muffled and distorted. Ethan tried to call out, but his voice was barely a whisper, weak and ineffectual. His chest felt like it was being crushed, and though surrounded by dozens of people, he had never felt so isolated. The man who commanded massive business empires couldn't even command his own body. A skateboarder weaved around his outstretched legs without sparing him a glance. A jogger shifted her path slightly to avoid him, likely mistaking him for someone resting. The crowd flowed around him, indifferent, like a stream around a rock. Everyone was wrapped up in their own world. The irony of it all hit him like a cruel joke. He had spent years building walls to keep others out, yet now, more than anything, he needed someone to break through and see him. His phone, his lifeline, sat uselessly back at his apartment, and all the money in the world couldn't help him here, on these weathered wooden planks. As his strength faded and darkness crept into the edges of his vision, the bustling cityscape that had been his domain grew blurry and distant. Just as the shadows threatened to consume him entirely, a small hand lightly touched his sleeve, grounding him in the moment. A young girl with lively eyes and pigtails knelt beside him, her face radiating concern. "Mister, are you okay?" she asked, her voice clear and full of warmth, cutting through the haze of his pain. Ethan tried to respond, but all he managed was a faint, strained groan. The little girl placed her tiny hand on his arm, her gentle touch somehow pulling him back from the edge. "I'm Lily," she said with quiet determination, as if her introduction alone could help him. "You look really sick." Through the fog of his pain, Ethan could see Lily's face shift from concern to fierce determination. She leapt to her feet, her pigtails bouncing, and sprinted toward the edge of the walkway. "Help!" she shouted, her clear young voice echoing farther than one might expect. "Somebody, please help! This man is sick!" At first, the crowd kept moving, ignoring her pleas, but Lily refused to give up. She waved her arms frantically, her entire body radiating urgency. "He needs a doctor. Please stop." Her persistence finally broke through the indifference. A couple paused, followed by a jogger, and soon a small group gathered around Ethan. Someone dialed 911, while others helped make him as comfortable as they could. "The ambulance is coming," Lily told him softly as she returned to his side. She slipped her tiny hand into his, holding it like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Don't worry, mister. They're going to make you better." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as they approached. Within minutes, paramedics were at the scene, their equipment clattering as they rushed to assist him. As they checked his vitals and prepared him for transport, Lily stayed close, watching their every move with wide, curious eyes. Just before the paramedics lifted him onto the stretcher, Ethan managed to open his eyes fully. Bathed in the golden light of the late afternoon sun, Lily's face stood out, so full of sincere worry that it touched something deep within him. For a fleeting moment, their eyes met, and despite the pain gripping him, Ethan felt a strange warmth that had nothing to do with his physical condition. As they wheeled him away, the last image he saw was Lily waving her small hand, her expression still filled with a mix of hope and concern. A steady beep pulled Ethan back to awareness. Slowly, his eyes fluttered open, revealing a sterile white ceiling and the unmistakable antiseptic smell of a hospital room. Everything felt dreamlike, as though he were waking from a long, heavy sleep. "Mr. Grayson?" A calm, gentle voice drew his attention. "I'm Dr. Laura Benson." Standing beside his bed, clipboard in hand, the doctor's face radiated both professionalism and kindness. "You've had a heart attack, but you're stable now. You're very lucky," she explained. "If it hadn't been for a little girl named Lily Carter, things could have been much worse." Ethan's throat was dry, but he managed to croak out, "Lily Carter?" "Yes," Dr. Benson confirmed, checking his vitals. "She found you on the bridge and got help. Her quick thinking likely saved your life. It's remarkable. Most adults just walked by, but she knew exactly what to do." A strange sensation stirred in Ethan's chest, one that had nothing to do with his medical condition. Memories of her small hands and earnest eyes filled his mind, along with the inexplicable comfort she had brought in his darkest moment. The warmth of her presence still lingered, a beacon amid the shadows. I need to thank her, Ethan said quietly, surprised by the unexpected emotion in his voice. That afternoon, his assistant, Matt Daniels, arrived with a tablet in hand, ready for instructions. Matt, I need you to find everything you can about Lily Carter, Ethan said, his tone more determined now. Address, family details, anything you can get. Of course, sir, Matt replied, his fingers already moving swiftly across the screen. Moments later, the door opened again, and Richard Lawson strolled in, his suit immaculate, and his expression a mix of concern and calculation. Ethan, my friend, you really gave us a fright, Richard said warmly, though his eyes betrayed a sharper interest. He eased into the chair beside the bed. So, how soon do you think you'll be back in the office? The Jensen merger is coming up, and the board is getting anxious. Ethan noticed Richard's glance at the medical monitor, his eyes assessing. There was something predatory in his supposedly casual demeanor. Dr. Benson says I should make a full recovery, Ethan responded carefully, studying Richard's reaction. Wonderful news, Richard replied, but his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. We'll have you back in charge in no time, though you might want to think about delegating more responsibilities. For your health, of course. As Richard continued talking, Ethan's thoughts drifted to Lily Carter, the little girl whose compassion had saved his life. The stark contrast between her genuine care and Richard's polished insincerity was undeniable. A few days later, Ethan's sleek black Mercedes pulled up in front of a rundown apartment building in Queens. His tailored suit stood out against the backdrop of crumbling bricks and graffiti-covered walls. Matt's research had led him to this address, the home of the young girl who had changed his life. With the elevator out of service, Ethan climbed 4 flights of stairs, his polished shoes clicking against the worn steps. Reaching apartment 4C, he paused briefly before knocking. The door opened to reveal a woman in her early 30s, her tired eyes offset by an air of quiet grace. Anna Carter? Ethan asked, adjusting his tie. Yes, she replied cautiously, her expression growing guarded. I'm Ethan Grant. Your daughter, Lily. He cleared his throat. She helped me on the bridge last week. Mummy, who is it? A small voice called out from inside. Moments later, Lily appeared beside her mother, her face lighting up with recognition. Mr. Grayson, you're okay, she exclaimed. Anna instinctively placed a protective hand on Lily's shoulder. Please, come in, she said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. The apartment was modest, but spotless, filled with well-worn furniture and carefully patched curtains. The walls were adorned with colorful children's drawings, adding a cheerful touch to the humble space. I wanted to thank Lily properly, Ethan said, pulling something from his jacket pocket. He took a check from his jacket and handed it to Anna. This is a small token of my gratitude for what she did. Anna's eyes widened as she saw the number on the check, but before she could say anything, Lily interrupted. I don't want money, Lily said, her bright eyes fixed on Ethan. Could you spend a day with me instead? Like a friend. The simplicity of her request left Ethan speechless. He stood frozen, the check still outstretched, as Lily continued to smile at him. Anna's expression shifted from surprise to concern. Lily, honey, she said gently, Mr. Grayson is a very busy man, and we don't really know him. Lily, undeterred, looked at her mother with conviction. But he has kind eyes, she insisted, and he looks like he needs a friend. Ethan slowly lowered the check, moved by the child's innocent observation. Anna studied the moment carefully, her protective instincts battling with her daughter's earnest request. Mr. Grayson, Anna began cautiously, while we're grateful for your generosity, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with... "Please, Mommy," Lily interrupted, her hopeful eyes turning toward her mother. "He can come to the park with us, and you'll be there too." Anna crossed her arms, her expression torn between caution and uncertainty. "I don't know, Lily. This is very unusual." She glanced at Ethan, noting his conflicted expression. Finally, she gestured toward the small kitchen. "Lily, sweetie, why don't you draw a picture while I talk to Mr. Grayson?" Lily nodded excitedly and skipped off to her little art table in the corner. In the kitchen, Anna lowered her voice. "I should explain," she said hesitantly, her hands twisting together. 2 years ago, my husband, Danielle," her voice faltered. "He died on that same bridge where Lily found you." Ethan's composed demeanor began to crack as she went on. "He saw someone in trouble, a teenager who had climbed over the railing. Daniel tried to save him." Her gaze grew distant, her voice heavy with memory. "The boy survived, but Daniel—" She paused, taking a shaky breath. "He slipped. Lily was only 3, Anna continued softly, but she remembers him so vividly." Ethan's grip on the edge of the counter tightened, his knuckles white. The parallel between Daniel's ultimate sacrifice and Lily's act of kindness struck him like a blow. "She sees you as a connection to her father," Anna explained, her voice gentle. "That bridge, it took her dad, but this time she was able to save someone instead." Something inside Ethan broke. Tears welled up in his eyes, and for the first time in years, he couldn't stop them. They streamed down his face as his shoulders shook. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. "I didn't know." Anna reached out and placed a comforting hand on his arm. "Neither did I at first," she said quietly. "But seeing her with you, the way she looks at you, she hasn't been this excited since Daniel." Ethan turned toward the living room, his gaze landing on Lily, happily humming as she colored at her little table. His chest ached with a profound emotion he hadn't felt in years. "I'll do it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll spend the day with her, with both of you, if you'll allow it." That evening, Ethan paced his spotless penthouse, the sound of his footsteps echoing through the empty rooms. He tugged at his tie, something he never did, and ran a hand through his usually perfect hair. "Matt," he called his assistant on speakerphone, "I need your help with something a bit unusual." "Of course, Mr. Grayson. What can I do?" Matt replied. Ethan hesitated before speaking, the words feeling unfamiliar. "I'm spending tomorrow with a child, a 5-year-old girl." A long pause followed. "I'm sorry, sir. Could you repeat that?" Matt's disbelief was clear in his tone. Ethan quickly explained, and the surprise on the other end was hard to miss. "Well, we could set up a private zoo tour, or maybe—" "No," Ethan cut him off. "Nothing extravagant. Something simple." He could hardly believe he'd said it. The next morning, Ethan stared at his reflection in the mirror, frowning. He was wearing dark jeans and a light blue sweater, clothes he barely remembered owning. His usual polished Italian leather shoes had been swapped for casual loafers. As he approached the Thompsons' apartment building, his palms felt clammy. He knocked, and the door swung open to reveal Lily, her face lighting up with delight. "Mr. Grayson, you look different," she giggled, pointing to his casual outfit. Anna stepped into view behind her, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Good morning, Mr. Grayson. I thought we could start with a visit to the Natural History Museum," Ethan began, pulling out a meticulously planned itinerary. "Then maybe—" "No, no," Lily interrupted, grabbing his hand and causing the papers to flutter to the ground. "I want to show you my neighborhood. There's a park, Mrs. Rodriguez's flower shop, and the best ice cream place ever." Ethan turned to Anna for help, but she merely shrugged, her amusement clear. "She tends to take charge," she said with a soft laugh. "Can we go now?" Lily asked eagerly, bouncing on her toes and holding tightly to his hand. "Yes, of course," Ethan replied, abandoning his carefully thought-out plan entirely. Anna stood in the doorway, watching as her daughter tugged Ethan down the hall, already chattering about the places they would visit. Her expression showed a mix of hope and caution as they disappeared around the corner. The warm morning sun lit up the bustling streets as Lily led Ethan along, her small hand gripping his tightly. Her enthusiasm was infectious, though Ethan worked hard to maintain his usual composed demeanor. "The park is my favorite place ever," Lily announced, guiding him through the iron gates of a small neighborhood playground. The air was filled with the joyful sounds of children's laughter. "Lily, over here!" two kids called, waving excitedly from the swings. Ethan's shoulders stiffened as Lily eagerly pulled him toward the children on the swings. "This is Tommy and Sarah," she introduced proudly, "and this is my new friend, Mr. Grayson. He's the man I helped on the bridge." Tommy's jaw dropped. "Whoa, seriously? That's awesome." Sarah, peeking shyly from behind her friend, asked, "Would you push me on the swing, Mr. Grayson?" Ethan hesitated, but the encouraging grin on Lily's face nudged him to agree. Moments later, he found himself gently pushing the girls on the swings, their laughter filling the air. Tommy joined them, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan felt a genuine smile tugging at his lips. After leaving the park, Lily led him down a cozy street lined with mom and pop shops. The warm scent of freshly baked bread filled the air as they approached a cheerful bakery with colorful flower boxes decorating the windowsills. "This is the best bakery ever," Lily declared, swinging the door open. A small bell chimed above as they stepped inside. "Lily, mi pequeña," Maria Sanchez greeted from behind the counter, a dusting of flour on her apron. "And who is this?" Maria asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "This is Mr. Grayson. He's my new friend," Lily announced. Carlos Sanchez emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. "Ah, welcome. Any friend of Lily's is family here." Before Ethan could utter a word of protest, Maria had already placed a warm chocolate croissant in his hands. "On the house," she insisted with a wink. They sat at a small table by the window as Lily happily bit into her pastry, a smear of chocolate dotting her chin. "I want to be a teacher when I grow up," she said between bites. "I want to help kids learn and make them happy. Just like my teacher, Mrs. Bennett." Ethan listened intently, moved by the sincerity of her dream. He watched as she waved at every passing neighbor, greeting each one with infectious joy. Through Lily's eyes, the world felt alive with wonder and hope, a stark contrast to the rigid, competitive life Ethan had crafted for himself. "You know what, Mr. Grayson," Lily said, looking up at him with chocolate-streaked fingers. "I think you needed a friend just as much as I did." Her words hit him like a soft tide, dissolving years of defenses he'd worked so hard to build. For once, Ethan didn't overthink or analyze. He simply sat there, enjoying a chocolate croissant with his unlikely new friend, letting the moment fill him with warmth. Later that evening, Ethan found himself standing in the Thompsons' small living room. The furniture was worn, the wallpaper peeling in places, but the room radiated warmth, decorated with family photos and Lily's colorful artwork. "Mrs. Thompson," Ethan said, his tone quieter than usual, "please let me help. I could arrange for better housing, maybe even start a college fund for Lily." Anna's expression flickered between gratitude and resolve. "That's very generous, Mr. Grayson," she replied, her voice steady. "But we've been managing just fine on our own." She straightened her back, standing tall despite her small frame, her pride and determination evident in her stance. "Daniel taught me the importance of standing on my own 2 feet. Anna's voice was calm but firm. "But surely," Ethan began, unused to having his offers declined. "We may not have much," Anna interrupted softly. "But what we do have, we've worked hard for. That matters to us." The following day at Grayson Enterprises, Richard Lawson paced his sleek corner office, his phone pressed tightly to his ear. "Yes, Sarah, I share your concerns. Ethan's been distracted lately, missing critical meetings." He paused to listen, his expression sharpening. This situation with the Thompson girl is just one example. He's becoming unreliable. Moving deftly between board members, Richard planted seeds of doubt. "Our stock could take a hit if anyone gets wind of his emotional instability," he murmured to one executive. "It might be time to consider a leadership change," he hinted to another, his tone measured but insidious. Meanwhile, in the heart of the neighborhood, Ethan strolled slowly along the busy streets, seeing details he'd overlooked before. An elderly woman carefully counted coins at the grocery store counter. A young man in a threadbare suit sprinted to catch the bus, likely headed to a second shift. A frazzled mother balanced shopping bags while soothing a wailing toddler. Outside the Sanchez bakery, Ethan paused to watch Carlos patching a cracked window with duct tape, clearly unable to afford a proper repair. Further down, a group of teenagers huddled on a crumbling stoop, sharing a single textbook as they studied together. These scenes unsettled Ethan, stirring a mix of discomfort and newfound understanding. For so long, his world had been defined by numbers and bottom lines, but now he was seeing life, raw, imperfect, and resilient. The dignity of these people, their quiet strength in the face of adversity, challenged everything he thought he understood about success. His phone vibrated with notifications from the office, but for the first time in years, Ethan ignored them, too engrossed in the lives unfolding around him. The next morning, soft sunlight filtered through the thin, faded curtains of the Thompsons' apartment as Ethan stood at the door, holding a box of fresh pastries. The familiar aroma of Maria's cinnamon rolls wafted through the air as Anna opened the door, her face registering surprise. "Mr. Grayson," she greeted, her voice warm but weary. "Please call me Ethan," he replied, holding out the box. "I thought you and Lily might like these. The Sanchez bakery really does have the best pastries in the neighborhood." Anna smiled, but the expression didn't fully mask the exhaustion etched on her face as she welcomed him inside. In the daylight, Ethan noticed just how pale she looked, the dark circles under her eyes more pronounced. Her hands trembled faintly as she set plates on the table. "Are you feeling all right?" Ethan asked, his tone filled with genuine concern. Anna hesitated, sinking slowly into a chair at the kitchen table. From the living room, the soft sound of Lily humming as she played with her dolls drifted into the kitchen. "I'm managing," she replied, though her voice wavered. She paused, drawing in a deep breath, as if gathering her resolve. "But since you ask, I have lupus." Her admission hung in the air as Ethan watched her trace idle patterns on the frayed tablecloth. "The treatments are costly," she continued quietly, "and insurance only covers so much. The medical bills, they just keep piling up." Her voice trailed off, leaving a heavy silence between them. Her voice was barely audible, shaky with emotion. "We're 3 months behind on rent. The landlord, he's been patient, but..." She paused, swallowing hard. "We got an eviction notice yesterday." The weight of her words hung in the small kitchen like a heavy fog. Ethan's chest tightened as his thoughts drifted to Lily, still humming cheerfully in the next room, blissfully unaware of how close they were to losing their home. "Anna," he said gently, "let me help. Not as charity, but as someone who cares about you and Lily." Her eyes filled with tears as she looked up. "I can't accept..." she began, but he interrupted softly. "I know. I understand your pride, but accepting help isn't weakness. It's strength. The strength to do what's best for your daughter. Anna's shoulders slumped, the weight of her struggles breaking through the strong facade she had maintained. For the first time, Ethan saw past the brave front to a mother terrified of her world falling apart. A few days later, the bell above the door at the Sanchez bakery jingled as Ethan walked in. The warm aroma of fresh bread enveloped him like a comforting hug. "Mr. Ethan, what brings you in so early?" Maria asked, dusting flour off her hands. "I need your help," he replied, his voice quiet but firm. "It's about Anna and Lily Carter." Carlos joined them from the kitchen, and the three sat at a corner table. Ethan explained Anna's situation, careful to protect her dignity. "A street fair," Maria exclaimed, her face lighting up. "We could raise money for families in need, not just for Anna." "The whole neighborhood could get involved," Carlos added, nodding enthusiastically. "I'll fund it," Ethan offered, without hesitation, but anonymously. In the days that followed, Ethan found himself spending more time in the neighborhood, often with Lily leading the way. She tugged him by the hand into the local library, where Mrs. Evelyn Harris greeted them warmly. "This is where I find all my favorite books," Lily declared proudly. Mrs. Harris watched with a knowing smile as Lily showed Ethan her special reading nook. Later, they visited the community center, where Coach James Peterson was teaching kids basketball. "Mr. Ethan, look," Lily called, attempting to dribble the ball across the court. The street fair came together beautifully. Bright banners stretched across the block, and the air was filled with the enticing aromas of food stalls. Maria and Carlos's pastries sold out within hours, while children dashed between game booths, their laughter ringing through the streets. Parents gathered to chat and share in the joy of the day. Near the center of the festivities, Anna stood quietly, her eyes glistening as she watched neighbors contribute to the community fund. Across the way, she noticed Ethan with Lily, who was enthusiastically showing him how to win a carnival game. He seemed like a completely different person from the stoic businessman who had first knocked on her door. When their eyes met, Anna gave Ethan a knowing look, one that conveyed her quiet understanding of his involvement in the fair. She didn't say a word, only offering him a small smile that let the truth linger between them. The event surpassed everyone's expectations, raising enough funds to support multiple families in need. As the golden light of the setting sun bathed the street, Ethan stood watching Lily play with a group of children, her laughter ringing through the festive air. For the first time in as long as he could remember, Ethan felt connected to something larger than himself. Meanwhile, in his dimly lit office, Richard Lawson leaned back in his leather chair, a sly smile playing on his lips as he carefully manipulated the company's quarterly financial reports. With practiced precision, he tweaked figures and shifted decimal points, crafting a false story of financial decline under Ethan's leadership. "Perfect," he muttered to himself, the satisfaction evident in his tone. Down the hall, Sarah Mitchell stared into Ethan's empty office through its glass walls, noting the untouched desk calendar marked with yet another afternoon away, the third time this week. She jumped slightly when Richard appeared at her side. "Concerning, isn't it?" he said, his voice low and deliberate. "Our CEO seems distracted lately." Sarah shifted uneasily. "He's been working remotely," she offered, though her words lacked conviction. "Is that what you believe?" Richard asked, his tone dripping with feigned concern. "Let me show you something." In the boardroom, Richard laid out the falsified financial reports before Thomas Reed and several other board members. "These numbers don't lie," he said, gesturing to the highlighted sections. "Our stock value has dropped 15% since Ethan's behavior began to change." Thomas Reed frowned as he adjusted his glasses, scanning the pages. "This is deeply concerning," he said gravely. "Very concerning indeed." Later that day, Richard met with investors Margaret Lawson and Victor Chen at an upscale restaurant, presenting his case with calculated precision. As they listened, Richard painted a bleak picture of a company spiraling into chaos. "Ethan Grant has lost his edge," Richard said, sliding falsified documents across the table. "He's become unpredictable, emotional. That's not the kind of leadership we need right now." Margaret tapped her manicured nails against her water glass, her eyes narrowing. "What exactly are you proposing, Richard?" she asked. "The board is preparing to call for a vote of no confidence," he replied smoothly. "We'll need investor support." Victor Chen studied the papers in front of him, his expression serious. "These losses are significant. If what you're saying is accurate—" "Every document has been verified," Richard assured him, knowing that his manipulations would hold up under superficial scrutiny. "We need to act before the situation worsens." Meanwhile, Sarah Mitchell sat at her desk, torn between loyalty to Ethan and the growing pile of evidence against him. She opened his calendar once more, noting the increasing number of unexplained absences. The numbers Richard had shared seemed damning, yet something about the situation didn't sit right with her. The pieces didn't quite add up, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Richard stood at his office window, a smug smile playing on his lips as he watched his plan unfold perfectly. Ethan, preoccupied with his newfound priorities, remained oblivious to the storm brewing against him. That evening, as the sun dipped low, its golden light filled Anna's cozy living room. Ethan sat on the worn couch, his usual composure giving way. "I haven't spoken to Rachel in years," he admitted quietly. "After our parents died, I threw myself into work. It felt easier than dealing with the pain." Anna handed him a steaming cup of tea, settling into the armchair across from him. "Sometimes we put up walls to protect ourselves," she said gently. "But those same walls can shut out the people who need us most." Ethan stared into the tea, his expression heavy. "I was 19. Rachel was only 16. I thought providing for her financially was enough, but I see now it wasn't." Anna's voice softened. "It's never too late to make things right. Maybe Rachel's just waiting for you to take the first step." Inspired by her words, Ethan hesitated before pulling out his phone. With trembling hands, he dialed Rachel's number. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "Rachel," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "it's Ethan. I'm sorry for not being there when you needed me, for choosing work over family. I miss you. If you're willing, I'd like to fix things." Later that day, Lily took Ethan beneath the Brooklyn Bridge, stopping in front of a vibrant mural. It showed a man in rescue gear standing against stormy skies. The bright colors radiated life, just as Lily's stories had brought her father to life. "This is my daddy," she said proudly, touching the mural. "He was really brave. There was a big storm and he saw someone who needed help." Ethan knelt beside her as she continued. "He went into the water and saved the man. But," her small voice faltered, "the waves were too big." Ethan's chest tightened as he gazed at Daniel Carter's face in the mural. He could see the same warmth and courage that shone in Lily's eyes. "Sometimes, Mummy and I come here at night," Lily said softly, her hand resting on the mural. "I tell Daddy about my day. Mummy says he was special because he always helped people." Ethan looked from the mural to Lily, the weight of her words settling heavily on him. Daniel had given everything for a stranger, while Ethan had spent years giving nothing to his own sister. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows of Grayson Enterprises boardroom. Richard Lawson stood at the head of the table, his expression grim. Slide after slide displayed charts and numbers that, at a glance, painted a picture of financial instability under Ethan's leadership. "The data doesn't lie," Richard said, his tone serious. "Our stock value has dropped 15%, and this erratic behavior is costing the company." The board members exchanged concerned glances as Richard continued, methodically laying out his case against Ethan. His plan was nearly complete. "As you can see," Richard's voice echoed through the room, sharp and authoritative. "These transactions clearly point to significant embezzlement." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the stunned silence. "And beyond that, there's evidence of gross negligence in recent months." Ethan sat motionless in his chair, his thoughts racing as he tried to reconcile these allegations with numbers he knew didn't match his own records. Sarah Mitchell shifted uncomfortably, her gaze darting between Ethan and Richard. "These are serious accusations," Thomas Reed said, his tone grim. "Mr. Grayson, can you explain these discrepancies?" Before Ethan could respond, Richard slid in smoothly with more fabricated evidence, cutting off any chance of defense. The board members exchanged uneasy glances as Richard's polished presentation solidified their doubts. The vote followed quickly. "Effective immediately," Thomas Reed declared, "Ethan Grant is removed as CEO of Grayson Enterprises." The decision was swift, final, and devastating. Within hours, the news spread like wildfire. Reporters swarmed the building's entrance, their cameras flashing as Ethan stepped outside. "Mr. Grayson, what do you say to these allegations?" they shouted. "Did you really embezzle company funds?" Ethan pushed through the crowd, his face pale and drawn, heading straight to Richard's office, only to find it empty. His former partner had disappeared, leaving the chaos in his wake. In the outer office, Matt Daniels was packing up his desk under the watchful eye of a security guard. "I'm sorry, Mr. Grayson," Matt said, his voice choked with emotion. "Mr. Langford accused me of collaborating with you and fired me." Ethan stood in the lobby of the company he had built from the ground up, now watching as everything he worked for unraveled. Even the security guard, who had greeted him every morning for 15 years, avoided his eyes, treating him like an outsider. Later, in his penthouse, a place that once symbolized triumph, Ethan paced the glossy floors, his reflection in the pristine windows, an unsettling reminder of his isolation. His phone buzzed endlessly with unanswered messages from Matt and emails from Rachel, her words filled with concern about the headlines. The vast, immaculate rooms of his home felt hollow, mirroring the ache in his chest. He instructed security to block all visitors and withdrew deeper into his solitude, the world outside feeling distant and surreal. By the third day of his self-imposed isolation, a small figure entered the lobby of Grayson Enterprises. Lily Carter, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit, scanned the elegant space with determination. Approaching the security desk, she said firmly, "I want to see Mr. Ethan." The guard crouched slightly, his voice gentle. "I'm sorry, little miss. No visitors allowed." Lily's lip quivered, but her resolve held strong. Returning home, she spent hours crafting a heartfelt letter with her markers and crayons, filling it with colorful drawings of the day they had shared. The park, the bakery, their stroll under the Brooklyn Bridge. Lily captured it all with her drawings, filling the spaces between them with her wobbly handwriting. Each line was filled with hope and trust. The next morning, she approached Mr. Henry Wallace, the kind-hearted doorman who had greeted tenants in the building for 2 decades. "Please, Mr. Wallace," she said earnestly, holding out her letter. "Can you make sure Mr. Ethan gets this? It's really, really important." Mr. Wallace's face softened as he accepted the envelope. "I'll make sure he gets it, Miss Lily," he promised with a kind smile. When the letter landed on Ethan's kitchen counter, it blended into the pile of unopened mail. At first, he brushed it aside, but the colorful envelope, adorned with hand-drawn hearts and stars, caught his attention. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. Tears filled his eyes as he saw Lily's crayon drawings and read her heartfelt words. "Dear Mr. Ethan," it began, "I miss you. The bakery isn't the same without you. Please don't be sad. You're my hero, just like my daddy was." The paper quivered in his hands as tears fell onto the bright drawings. Through Lily's innocent view of the world, Ethan didn't see himself as a disgraced CEO, but as someone who was still trusted, still valued. Her pure, unwavering belief in him cut through the despair that had consumed him. Wiping his eyes, Ethan stood taller, a sense of purpose reawakening in him. He walked to his home office, pulling out folders and papers, determination hardening with each step. It was time to fight back, not just for himself, but for the little girl who still believed in him. The following morning, Ethan stood outside the Sanchez bakery, inhaling the comforting aroma of fresh bread wafting through the air. At precisely 9 a.m., Matt Daniels arrived, his laptop under one arm and a renewed sense of purpose in his stride. "It's good to see you, sir," Matt said, adjusting his tie. "Where do we start?" Maria and Carlos led them up a creaky staircase to a modest, dusty room above the bakery. Sunlight streamed through a small window, catching the floating particles in the air. The space was far from glamorous, nothing like Ethan's old office, but it felt alive, rooted in the community. "We can clean it up," Maria offered nervously, wringing her hands. "It's not much, but—" "It's perfect," Ethan interrupted, surprising himself with the sincerity of his words. They set up the makeshift office with donated chairs and a borrowed table. As they worked, Maria shared her fears about Mr. Pierce, their landlord. "He raised the rent by 60% last month," she said, her voice tight. "Most businesses on this street are struggling to keep up." Ethan listened carefully, his mind already spinning with solutions. He spent the rest of the afternoon walking the neighborhood with Matt, talking to other small business owners. Mrs. Harris from the library echoed similar worries, and Coach Peterson from the community center admitted he might have to close his youth basketball program due to rising costs. Each story deepened Ethan's resolve. This wasn't just about saving himself anymore, it was about standing up for an entire community. "We need to organize," Ethan said to Matt as they documented each story. "These people have more power together than they realize." That evening, Ethan hosted a gathering at the bakery after it closed for the day. The cozy space quickly filled with local business owners, their expressions a mix of worry and cautious optimism. The inviting aroma of Carlos's fresh coffee and Maria's warm pastries created a sense of comfort as Ethan addressed the group. "Mr. Pierce is relying on your fear and isolation," Ethan began, his voice steady and sure. "But if we stand together, we can negotiate fair terms. I've dealt with people like him before. He won't be expecting organized resistance." Mrs. Harris nodded enthusiastically, and Coach Peterson leaned forward, intrigued. Around the room, small business owners exchanged looks of agreement and determination. "We'll form a business alliance," Ethan continued, as Matt handed out simple but polished documents he'd prepared. "Together, we represent a significant share of this neighborhood's economy. That gives us leverage." The room buzzed with energy as people eagerly signed up, sharing their experiences and offering ideas. For the first time since his fall from corporate grace, Ethan felt genuinely useful. This wasn't about profit anymore. It was about purpose. The newly established Brooklyn Bridge Business Coalition began meeting regularly in the upstairs room of the bakery, which had been transformed into a lively community hub. Ethan sat at a weathered desk, carefully reviewing lease agreements, while Matt worked on organizing files on his laptop. "These contracts are riddled with illegal clauses," Ethan explained to the gathered group. "Mr. Pierce has been banking on people not understanding their rights." Maria and Carlos shared a hopeful glance as Ethan laid out a clear strategy for challenging the predatory leases. Outside, Lily Carter skipped happily from shop to shop, her pigtails bouncing as she handed out colorful handmade flyers. "Save our neighborhood," she called cheerfully, earning smiles from those passing by. "Your daughter has a real talent for marketing," Ethan commented to Anna, who stood watching from the bakery doorway. She smiled warmly, a healthy glow returning to her face after starting her new treatment. "She believes in you," Anna said softly, her voice full of gratitude. "We all do." Over the next few days, Ethan applied his business expertise to help the local shops thrive. He showed Maria and Carlos how to optimize their inventory system, reducing waste and improving their profits. At the youth center, he worked with Coach Peterson to create a sustainable budget that secured the future of the basketball program. When Jonathan Pierce finally agreed to meet with the coalition, he arrived expecting to intimidate a scattered group of tenants. Instead, he found himself facing a united front of business owners led by a former CEO who knew every trick in the book. "These lease terms violate state law," Ethan stated firmly, sliding documented evidence across the table. "The coalition is prepared to take legal action if necessary." Pierce's confidence smirk faltered as he realized his position had weakened. The community watched with bated breath as negotiations began, their futures hanging in the balance. Lily perched on a stool near the bakery counter, carefully coloring new posters for the coalition. "Mr. Ethan," she called out as he passed by, "are you going to save everybody's stores?" Ethan knelt beside her, examining her artwork. "We're all saving them together, Lily. That's what community means." Anna observed this interaction from behind the counter, where she helped Maria organize receipts. The warmth in Ethan's eyes when he spoke to Lily was a far cry from the cold businessman who had first appeared at their door with a checkbook. Their eyes met briefly, and Anna felt her heart skip a beat at the gentle smile he offered her. In a dimly lit corner of the Sanchez Bakery's upstairs office, Ethan and Matt hunched over stacks of financial documents spread across the wooden table. The evening light cast long shadows through the windows as they pieced together evidence of Richard's deception. "Look at these quarterly reports," Matt said, pointing to a series of numbers. "The dates don't match the transaction records. Someone altered these deliberately." Ethan nodded grimly, his jaw tightening. Richard was always meticulous about documentation. He knew exactly what he was doing. A soft knock interrupted their concentration. Sarah Mitchell stood in the doorway, nervously clutching her purse. Her face showed the strain of sleepless nights. "Thank you for coming, Sarah." But afterward, she reached into her bag and pulled out a USB drive. "These are the original files from the server backup. Richard didn't know I had access to them." Across town in his luxurious corner office, Richard Lawson paced behind his desk. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Mr. Brooks, I need you to keep an eye on Ethan Grant." Richard spoke and clipped tones. "Track his movements, his contacts, everything. I want to know what he's planning." Leonard Brooks, a weathered man in his 50s, sat in his parked car outside Grayson's penthouse. "Consider it done, Mr. Langford. I'll start surveillance immediately." Back at the bakery, Matt loaded the USB drive onto his laptop while Ethan and Sarah reviewed the documents together. The truth was beginning to emerge, hidden in columns of numbers and carefully altered dates. "With these original files," Matt said, his eyes scanning the screen. Instead, Pierce found himself facing a unified group of business owners led by a former CEO who knew every tactic in the book. "These lease terms violate state law," Ethan said confidently, sliding the evidence across the table. "The coalition is ready to pursue legal action, if necessary." Pierce's self-assured smirk faded as he realized the power had shifted. The community watched anxiously as the negotiations unfolded, knowing their livelihoods were at stake. Meanwhile, Lily sat perched on a stool near the bakery counter, carefully coloring new posters for the coalition. "Mr. Ethan," she called out as he passed, "are you going to save everybody's stores?" Ethan crouched beside her, admiring her vibrant artwork. "We're saving them together, Lily," he said with a warm smile. "That's what being a community is all about." Behind the counter, Anna worked alongside Maria, organizing receipts. She glanced up at Ethan, noticing the genuine affection in his eyes as he spoke to Lily. It was a stark contrast to the cold, detached man who had first come to her door holding a check. Their eyes met briefly, and Anna felt her heart flutter at the gentle smile he gave her. Upstairs in the dimly lit office, Ethan and Matt pored over piles of financial documents spread across the table. The fading evening light cast long shadows as they worked to piece together the evidence of Richard's deception. "Look at these quarterly reports," Matt said, tapping on a set of figures. "The dates don't align with the transaction records. Someone tampered with them on purpose." Ethan's expression hardened, his jaw tightening. Richard was always precise with his paperwork. He knew exactly what he was doing. A quiet knock interrupted their focus. Sarah Mitchell stood in the doorway, clutching her purse tightly, her face etched with exhaustion. "Thank you for coming, Sarah," Ethan said, standing to greet her. Hesitantly, she reached into her bag and produced a USB drive. "These are the original files from the server backups," she explained. "Richard didn't know I had access to them." Across town, Richard Lawson paced in his opulent corner office, the city lights glinting through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He picked up his phone and dialed. "Mr. Brooks, I need you to keep tabs on Ethan Grant," Richard said sharply. "I want a full report on his movements, his contacts, everything. I need to know exactly what he's planning." Leonard Brooks, a grizzled man in his 50s, sat in a parked car outside Ethan's penthouse. "Consider it done, Mr. Langford," he replied, starting the engine. "Surveillance begins immediately." Back at the bakery, Matt plugged the USB drive into his laptop while Ethan and Sarah examined the files. Slowly but surely, the truth came into focus, hidden in columns of numbers and doctored dates. "With these original files," Matt said, his eyes scanning the screen, "we can prove everything. Right now, this is what matters most," Ethan murmured, as he gently adjusted Lily's position while she slept soundly. The following day, Richard Lawson sat in his dimly lit office, a predatory grin creeping across his face as Leonard Brooks spread photographs across the glossy mahogany desk. The images showed Ethan meeting with Sarah Mitchell, working out of the Sanchez bakery, and organizing community meetings. "Excellent work, Leonard," Richard said, plucking a photo of Ethan and Sarah, deep in conversation. "This is exactly what I needed." Within hours, Jonathan Pierce's office began sending out eviction notices. Maria and Carlos Sanchez stood frozen in their bakery, hands trembling as they read the ominous document. Similar scenes unfolded along the street as other business owners received their notices. "This is harassment," Rachel said sharply, scanning the papers in their makeshift office. She opened her laptop and began typing furiously. "We can file an emergency injunction. These eviction notices are blatantly retaliatory." Ethan nodded, his jaw tightening with resolve. "How soon can it be ready?" he asked. "By morning," Rachel replied, already drafting the necessary documents. Meanwhile, at Grayson Enterprises, Richard cornered Sarah Mitchell in the elevator. "Interesting lunch meeting yesterday," he said smoothly, his voice laced with menace. "With our former CEO." Sarah's face turned pale, but she held her ground. "Are you having me followed, Richard?" she demanded. "Let me be clear," Richard said, stepping closer, his tone icy. "If you keep helping Ethan, your career is over. I'll make sure you never work in corporate finance again." As the elevator doors opened, Sarah walked out, her hands shaking. She made her way to her office and sank into her chair, tears welling in her eyes. On her desk sat a framed photo of her daughter's college acceptance letter, a reminder of the education she was still working to pay for. Next to it lay a file containing damning evidence of Richard's fraudulent activities. Sarah picked up the file with trembling hands, the weight of her decision bearing down on her. Her family's future, built on years of hard work, teetered against the truth she now held in her hands. Back in the neighborhood, Ethan stood before the Brooklyn Bridge Business Coalition in the community center. "We're not giving up," he declared, his voice strong and steady as he addressed the anxious faces before him. "My sister Rachel is filing the injunction first thing tomorrow. We'll fight this together." The room buzzed with determined voices as business owners shared their struggles and reaffirmed their commitment to stand united. Rachel quietly worked behind the scenes, building their legal defense, while Ethan moved from group to group, offering reassurance and solidarity. The next day, the sound of Sarah Mitchell's heels echoed against the marble floor of the makeshift office above the Sanchez bakery as she arrived carrying a heavy box of documents. Her hands shook slightly, but her face reflected pure determination. "This is everything," she said, setting the box on the desk where Ethan, Rachel, and Matt had gathered. Emails, altered financial reports, even recordings from board meetings where Richard tampered with the numbers. Rachel began sifting through the evidence with the precision of a seasoned attorney. "This is exactly what we needed," she said. "The manipulation of these quarterly reports alone is enough to prove fraud. Thank you, Sarah." Ethan's voice was soft, but sincere. "I know how much this must have cost you." Matt spread the documents out across the table, and together they began preparing their case for the upcoming shareholder meeting. The evidence painted a stark and undeniable picture of Richard's calculated betrayal. Meanwhile, at the Thompson residence, Anna reclined on the couch, still pale but grateful to finally be home from the hospital. Ethan sat beside her, explaining their plan to expose Richard. "We have proof of everything," he said, his tone calm yet resolute. "At the shareholder meeting next week, we'll present it all." Anna placed her hand over his. "The whole neighborhood is behind you, Ethan. You've shown us what real leadership looks like." Outside, the sound of bustling activity caught their attention. Lily burst through the door, her eyes shining with excitement. "Come look," she exclaimed, tugging at Ethan's sleeve. Stepping to the window, Ethan saw a gathering of neighbors on the street below. Homemade signs read, "We stand with Ethan," and "Community over greed." Maria and Carlos Sanchez handed out fresh pastries, while Coach Peterson coordinated chairs and tables. "I told everyone how you're fighting for us," Lily said proudly, "and they all wanted to help." Ethan stood at the window, overwhelmed by the sight of families he'd come to know, business owners he'd guided, and children he'd met through Lily, all rallying to support him. The cold, distant man who had once collapsed on the Brooklyn Bridge felt like someone else entirely. Rachel joined him at the window, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "This is what real success looks like, brother," she said softly. Back at the table, Matt worked to organize the evidence into polished, compelling presentations, while Sarah added detailed notes outlining Richard's schemes. Their case was airtight, their determination unshakable, bolstered by the unwavering support of the community and the truth they were ready to unveil. The grand conference room at Grayson Enterprises buzzed with tension as shareholders and board members filed in, their hushed conversations creating an undercurrent of anticipation. Ethan Grant stood confidently at the front of the room, his posture relaxed yet commanding, a stark difference from the rigid demeanor he once carried. Flanked by Rachel, Matt, and Sarah, each holding folders filled with damning evidence, Ethan faced a room filled with shareholders and board members. At the head of the table, Richard Lawson sat in the CEO's chair, his usual smug smile faltering as Ethan approached the podium. The room grew silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ethan began, his voice steady and clear, "I stand before you today, not just as the former CEO of this company, but as someone who has uncovered a troubling truth." With deliberate precision, Ethan laid out the evidence. One by one, doctored financial reports appeared on the large screen behind him, followed by incriminating emails and recorded conversations. Sarah Mitchell stepped forward to add her testimony, her words adding weight to every revelation. "These documents clearly reveal systematic fraud orchestrated by Richard Lawson," Rachel explained, pointing out specific instances of embezzlement and forgery. Richard shot to his feet, his face red with anger. "This is absurd," he shouted. "Grayson is trying to destroy this company. He's unstable, consorting with common street people." The shareholders murmured amongst themselves, but Matt Daniels calmly stepped in to present the next piece of evidence. A recorded conversation of Richard meticulously planning the scheme. Richard's composure began to crumble. "You're all fools," he bellowed, pointing an accusatory finger at Ethan. "I built this company while you were off playing charity worker in Brooklyn." Two security guards moved closer as his behavior spiraled further. His tie was askew and his carefully polished appearance unraveled along with his lies. The board chairman quickly called for a vote. Faced with overwhelming evidence, the shareholders raised their hands one by one. The decision was unanimous. Ethan would be reinstated as CEO. "You can't do this!" Richard lunged toward the podium, but security intercepted him. As he was dragged from the room, his shouts echoed through the hallways, filled with threats and accusations. The board chairman rose from his seat. "Mr. Grayson, on behalf of the board, we extend our sincerest apologies. Please accept the position of CEO of Grayson Enterprises once again." Ethan nodded, accepting the role with quiet dignity as the room erupted into applause. The following day, with Ethan back at the helm, the grand main hall of Grayson Enterprises was packed with employees from every department. Faces filled with anticipation and curiosity turned toward the podium as Ethan stepped up, looking more approachable than ever in his well-tailored suit. "For years," he began, his voice strong yet reflective as it carried through the hall, "I ran this company with a focus solely on profits, but I forgot that a business is about more than just its bottom line. It's about people." The crowd fell silent, hanging on his every word, as Ethan continued to address them with a sincerity that marked the beginning of a new chapter for the company. "My recent experiences have taught me invaluable lessons about community, compassion, and accountability," Ethan began, his voice steady and heartfelt. "Starting today, Grayson Enterprises will chart a new course." He gestured toward Matt Daniels, standing nearby. "First, I'm proud to announce the return of Matt Daniels as our Chief Operating Officer. His dedication and integrity embody the principles we will now uphold." Applause broke out as Matt stepped forward, his warm smile reflecting the support of the room. Ethan then turned his attention to Sarah Mitchell, seated in the front row. Sarah Mitchell showed me what I had overlooked, the importance of giving back. I am appointing her as our new Vice President of Corporate Social Responsibility. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise as applause rippled through the crowd. Rising to her feet, She accepted the role with a mix of grace and resolve. Ethan continued, "Our new initiatives will include a program to support small businesses, particularly in underserved areas. We'll also launch a community development fund and implement sustainable practices across all operations. Each department will form committees to contribute ideas and help bring these plans to life." The energy in the room shifted palpably. Employees began nodding, exchanging excited glances, and jotting down notes. "This isn't just about improving our corporate image," Ethan emphasized, his voice rich with conviction. "It's about becoming a positive force in our community. Every single one of you has a part to play in this transformation." Around the room, employees straightened in their seats, visibly moved by his passion. The rigid corporate atmosphere gave way to a collective sense of purpose and inspiration. "Together," Ethan concluded, "we can build something truly meaningful, a company that measures success not only in profits, but in the lives we touch and the communities we uplift." The response was electric. The entire room rose to their feet in a standing ovation, the applause thunderous and sincere. As Ethan gazed across the crowd, he saw faces glowing with renewed hope, signaling the beginning of a transformative chapter for Grayson Enterprises. That afternoon, the warm sunlight spilled through the Thompson apartment window as Ethan sat at the small kitchen table with Anna and Lily. His excitement was unmistakable as he shared the news of his reinstatement and his victory over Richard Lawson. "That's amazing news, Ethan," Anna exclaimed, her complexion noticeably brighter since starting her new treatment. Lily bounced eagerly in her chair. "Does this mean you'll visit us more often?" she asked. "Actually," Ethan said, reaching into his briefcase with a smile, "I have something special to show you both." He pulled out a set of architectural drawings, spreading them carefully across the table. "These are plans for a new park we want to build in the neighborhood, dedicated to your father, Daniel," Ethan said, spreading the designs across the table. Anna's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling up as Lily leaned forward, her eyes wide with wonder. "Look, Mommy," Lily exclaimed, pointing to the colorful renderings. "There's going to be swings and a playground." Ethan's tone was gentle but purposeful as he continued. "I've been working with Councilwoman Patricia Lopez to secure the perfect location. Just 3 blocks from here. We want to create a space that not only honors Daniel's memory, but also serves the community he loved so deeply." Anna wiped her eyes, her voice trembling with emotion. "Ethan, this is... I don't even know what to say." Ethan placed his hand over Lily's, meeting her gaze. "Your father was a hero," he said softly. "The park will feature a memorial plaque telling his story, so future generations can know about his bravery." Shortly after, Councilwoman Lopez arrived, bringing more details about the project. She joined them at the table, discussing timelines and how to involve the community, while Lily eagerly added her own creative touches to the park plans with crayons and markers. "The neighborhood's response has been incredible," Patricia shared. "Everyone wants to pitch in with the planning and construction." As they talked, Ethan noticed how much Anna's energy had improved since starting her treatments. Her eyes sparkled, and her smile appeared more often, filling the room with warmth. Their gazes met briefly across the table, lingering a moment longer than either had expected. Quietly, Ethan turned to Anna and said, "The foundation is committed to covering your medical care for as long as you need it." Anna looked at him, her voice soft but steady. "You've already done so much." As she reached for one of the drawings, her hand brushed against his, a small but meaningful gesture. "You and Lily taught me what really matters," Ethan replied, his voice low. Everything else just fell into place. The golden afternoon light continued to pour into the apartment as the group planned and dreamed together, their voices blending with Lily's cheerful chatter. The modest kitchen, once a simple and unremarkable space, now buzzed with hope and fresh beginnings, filled with possibilities they couldn't have imagined just a few months ago. The following week, the construction site for Daniel Carter Memorial Park buzzed with activity as workers poured the foundation. Ethan walked through the site, greeting crew members, many of whom he recognized as neighbors he'd met through the Brooklyn Bridge Business Coalition. "The second phase starts next week," explained foreman Mike Rodriguez, pointing to a section of the site. "We've hired 20 more people from the neighborhood to help." Across the street, the freshly installed windows of the Sanchez Bakery's expansion gleamed in the sunlight, a visible reminder of the progress and renewal spreading through the community. Thanks to Ethan's small business grant program, Maria and Carlos had expanded their bakery, doubling its size and bringing on 5 new employees. "The mentorship program changed everything," Maria told Anna Carter as she packed boxes of warm pastries. "Ethan showed us how to manage inventory and improve our marketing. Now we can hardly keep up with all the orders." Meanwhile, Rachel Grant had turned an abandoned storefront into a thriving legal clinic. Every Wednesday and Saturday, she and a team of volunteer lawyers helped local residents with issues like housing disputes, contracts, and other legal concerns. "It's incredible what having proper legal support can do for a neighborhood," Rachel said to Mrs. Evelyn Harris, who had successfully renegotiated her library's funding terms with the clinic's help. The Brooklyn Bridge Business Coalition held its monthly meeting in Coach James Peterson's newly renovated gymnasium. Business owners exchanged success stories and brainstormed new initiatives. The coalition, which started with just a handful of participants, had grown to over 50 businesses, each committed to supporting the others. When Ethan first mentioned the idea of this coalition, "I never thought it would unite us like this," Coach Peterson told the group, his voice filled with pride. Lily Carter spent many afternoons watching the progress of her father's park from a safe distance, often with Ethan or Anna by her side. On one particularly sunny day, she tugged on Ethan's sleeve as they observed workers installing the new playground equipment. "Look!" she exclaimed, pointing to the centerpiece where her father's memorial was being prepared. "Daddy's park is getting so beautiful." Anna squeezed her daughter's hand, her eyes glistening with happy tears. "It really is, sweetheart," she replied softly. Lily grinned, her face glowing with pride. "The whole neighborhood looks amazing now," she continued. "And it's because you helped everyone, Ethan, just like my daddy used to." The changes in the community were evident everywhere. Streets that once felt tired and forgotten now buzzed with life. Shop windows proudly displayed "Help Wanted" signs, and families gathered in lots that had been transformed into vibrant community gardens. On the day of the Daniel Carter Memorial Park grand opening, the autumn sun cast a golden glow over the park. Hundreds of community members turned out for the celebration. Colorful balloons and streamers adorned the entrance, and the scent of fresh pastries from the Sanchez Bakery mingled with offerings from other local vendors. Children darted between chairs set up in front of the covered statue, their laughter ringing out across the freshly paved walkways. Nearby, Coach Peterson organized games while Mrs. Evelyn Harris handed out booklets detailing Daniel Carter's life and legacy. At precisely noon, Councilwoman Patricia Lopez stepped up to the podium. "Today, we celebrate not just a new park, but the enduring spirit of a hero who inspired this transformation," she said. The crowd fell silent as the statue was unveiled. Cast in bronze, it depicted Daniel Carter in a moment of bravery, reaching out to help another. The audience stood in quiet awe, reflecting on the legacy of a man whose courage had sparked a community's rebirth. Anna Carter pressed her hand to her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks as emotion overwhelmed her. Beside her, Ethan placed a steady hand on her shoulder, offering quiet support. When Ethan Grant stepped up to the podium, the polished corporate persona he once wore was nowhere to be seen, replaced by a warmth that reflected his transformation. "Months ago, I was a different man," he began, his voice steady and heartfelt, as the crowd listened in silence. "I thought success was measured in dollars and deals, but a little girl showed me that real wealth is found in the connections we make and the lives we touch." His gaze drifted to Lily, who stood in the crowd, beaming back at him with pride. Daniel Carter's legacy reminds us that one act of selflessness can ripple through an entire community. His spirit lives on in each of us, every neighbor who lends a hand, every business supporting local families, every child playing in this park. Moved by his words, Anna stepped forward, unplanned, to stand beside Ethan at the podium. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice thick with emotion. "You've helped our community heal and grow stronger." Their eyes met briefly, saying more in that moment than words ever could. From the crowd, Daniel Hartman smiled, proud to witness the transformation of his old friend, while Rachel Grant discreetly wiped tears, deeply moved by her brother's journey. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for, the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Lily Carter, wearing her favorite yellow dress, stepped forward with oversized scissors in hand and a determined look on her face. She cut through the red ribbon with enthusiasm as the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. The park gates swung open, music filled the air, and the celebration began in earnest. Maria and Carlos Sanchez handed out trays of pastries, while children rushed eagerly to explore the new playground. Overseeing it all stood the bronze statue of Daniel Carter, a timeless symbol of courage, compassion, and the enduring strength of community. An autumn breeze rustled through the trees as Ethan Grant sat quietly on a wooden bench in the park, his attention divided between the sound of children playing and the framed photo resting in his hands. The picture showed a much younger Ethan standing beside his father at a baseball game, both smiling wide. He traced the edge of the frame with his finger, remembering how he'd kept this photo hidden away in a drawer for so many years. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of Lily's joyous laughter, drawing his gaze upward. She was engaged in an elaborate game of tag with Tommy Williams and Sarah Johnson, their shoes kicking up wood chips as they darted around the playground. Her pure, unfiltered joy reminded Ethan of the light she'd brought back into his own life. Anna approached quietly, settling beside him on the bench. Her improved health was evident in the color returning to her cheeks and the brightness in her eyes. She glanced at the photo in his hands and smiled gently. "I haven't looked at this in years," Ethan said softly, his voice tinged with reflection. "Lily taught me it's okay to remember, to feel." Anna's hand slipped into his, their fingers naturally intertwining. "She has that effect on people," she said softly, a warm smile lighting her face. "What do you think your father would say about all this?" Ethan paused, his gaze steady on the scene before him. "I think he'd be proud," he answered. "Not of the business success, but of finally understanding what he always tried to teach me, about community and taking care of others." They sat together in a peaceful silence, watching as children climbed on the playground equipment. Parents shared conversations on nearby benches, and elderly couples strolled hand in hand along the park's winding paths. The park had become a vibrant hub, a place that radiated life and brought the neighborhood closer together. "I never thought I'd find this," Ethan admitted after a moment, giving Anna's hand a gentle squeeze. "A sense of belonging, purpose beyond numbers and profit margins. People who care about me for who I am, not just what I can do for them." Anna turned to him, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "We could build something beautiful together, Ethan. All of us." He looked at her, then at the scene unfolding in the park, his heart swelling with gratitude. "We already are," he replied, his voice filled with quiet certainty. They both turned as Lily called out from the top of the slide, her small arm waving enthusiastically. Ethan waved back, his smile broad and genuine, a reflection of the profound peace he had discovered through this unexpected second chance at life. If you enjoyed the story of Ethan and Lily, I've chosen another heartfelt